Good morning everyone, my name is Elliott Young, I'm from EMC Consulting. Our area to look at was, do cloud vendors really want interoperability? And how do you avoid vendor lock-in? Well, we started to talk about this and a few different areas came up. I wonder if you have your own strategies for avoiding vendor lock-in and if they're the same things that we came up with. We talked about the key issue. This is supposed to be a key button. The key issue is that of data. You can have a strategy which talks about how do you move ad hoc workloads from your own data center to a third-party data center back again. But that in itself is not enough unless you address the challenge of where is the data. So imagine the scenario, imagine you're McDonald's and you've got a huge data set which represents all of the transactions that are happening in various restaurants, and that's merged with fields from other third parties. It's no small undertaking to architect a system where that data set can reside in your data center, but you also have the flexibility to move it in real time to a third-party site or third-party vendor or cloud solution. Technologies do exist to do that, but the key to it is how do you do that without interrupting the service and avoiding downtime. So it turns out actually when you select your application that's going to host this data or host the service, effectively you're already locked in. And we talked about the fact that when you make the decision to go with Siebel or to go with Exchange, for example, your data is already locked into that, whether it's a cloud solution or if you're hosting it yourself. And what that means is, actually, it's quite difficult to move between competitors. So if you want to take all of your email from one Exchange vendor to another service provider, that should be, in theory, quite straightforward. If you want to take that from Exchange to Google Mail, then that's a different approach and something you have to think about. Is that something I want to do as a one-off, or is something that I want to do on a regular basis to move between those kind of cloud solutions? We also talked about the different types of things that you want to achieve from your cloud solution. So are you looking for software as a service? And that was where the majority of our discussions came from. But there's other options such as platform as a service and infrastructure as a service. And in these scenarios, it's a lot easier to bounce your services around the different cloud offerings and try to sidestep some kind of vendor lock-in. So what it comes down to is you need to make a decision when you're choosing a vendor or a service provider. So let's say we're going to choose where we're going to host email in the cloud. Then what are the selection criteria that you come up with? It's not just about the functionality you want to achieve, but it's about how do you disengage from that supplier in the future if you have to. And came up with this concept of the sort of prenup agreement. So right from day one you say, in the future I may wish to move away from you, so how are you going to help me, service provider, to do that if I need to? One of the real world examples of where that came up was around performance. So one of the people at our table said, you know, what's happened to us is there's been this big promise of public cloud which says, don't worry about performance, when you need to scale up, you can take on the elastic nature of the cloud, everything's going to be fine. But what they found in reality was that didn't happen. Earlier on in the day we heard about a session where the police wanted to publish details about crimes in the area, and the site became so popular that it actually swamped part of the Yahoo infrastructure in Europe. So it does actually show that it's not always going to be a rosy situation. You need to have some kind of exit strategy to avoid that lock-in. Give yourself your own flexibility. So what are the main points that came out of this? Well, the three main points that we talked about at the end were you need to retain control of the customizations that you make so that you can have that exit strategy if you want to, and you don't lock yourself in by making special customizations or integrations to the products that you select. You still have to retain an architectural capability within house. There's no point saying to a third party, there you go, you now take control of my architecture and how I design the business services. And then the last point we talked about was open architecture. So some clients have gone down the route saying, actually, when I develop my in-house cloud solution for a custom application, I'm going to deliberately choose an open source approach, such as spring source and run that on VMware. The good thing about that, obviously, is that when you're running your application on your private cloud with a spring source application, you might choose to move it to a public cloud and use completely different database technology and have a completely different setup and a completely different network, but that is all abstracted through the spring source layer. The problem with that is that effectively now you're locking yourself into that spring source approach. So even in cases where people have deliberately tried to avoid the vendor lock-in, at some level I think you have to accept that there are some key architectural decisions that need to be made up front.
Thank you very much.